Welcome to Laid Back Law with your favorite lawyers from around the interwebs, discussing the most pressing of topics every Friday at noon Eastern Time.
All right, we are back. It has become a struggle of late to do this every Friday. All these lawyers seem to have real jobs and really are billing clients, and it's throwing a wrench into my noon Friday plans, but we are here, we are persevering, and so far we have Kurt from Uncivil Law and Ian of Runkle the Bailey with us. Others will probably drift in over time. And Joe usually shows up after a bit of time. Nate will show up when Nate shows up, and we'll keep it going. Now, I kind of want to wait. Oh, here we go. Nate is here, so perfect. We can start off with the crazy, because Kurt, I know you and Nate both covered this. So make me understand how someone named Young Thug can plead guilty to everything and walk out. So make it make sense to all of us.
Okay, so go ahead, Kurt. I'll let you start it off.
No, yeah. So the Young Thug trial has been going on for quite a long time, and the case has been marred by any number of problems. Perhaps most notably when the judge had an ex parte with the prosecutor and not with the lawyer, and then the lawyer called him out on it. It's like, well, how do you know? It's like, that's not really the issue. How do you know? I'm making it the issue. And then through the lawyer in contempt, which ultimately got reversed by the Court of Appeals. Incidentally, the contempt got stricken down, as I imagine we all would understand. But that was like just emblematic of the problems. So there was a new trial. There was a new motion for a mistrial, as you know, as there has been, but it looked like the judge might have been granting it. And so we've seen a lot of these defendants plead out. Now, most of them have pled out with a deal in place. But Young Thug himself pled out with no deal. He did not accept a plea deal, because people seem to be confused on this point. There was no plea deal. It was just a naked plea of guilty. The only thing that the state said is, we'll provide our recommendation. And they said, we recommend 25 years plus 20 probation. But there was nothing binding the prosecutor, and there's certainly nothing binding the judge. So despite the fact that he pled guilty to the RICO and or pled no contest strictly, pled no contest to the RICO, pled no contest to the gang activity, and then pled guilty to the other felonies, he was given time served. He's given 15 years probation, and it was 20 or 25 years. It might have been 23. It was something like that on the back end. So if he does 15 years probation, he keeps his nose clean, then all that goes away. If he violates probation, then he gets the remainder of his probation plus the 20 plus years that's tacked on at the end. But he went home, and he can still, and he got the most generous conditions I've ever heard of in my life. He can still travel anywhere he wants to. He can still travel all over the world. He can still have armed security. He can still hang out with his felon friends, as long as it's a business necessity. The only thing is, stay out of Metro Atlanta, I guess. It's the most bizarre, generous sentence I've ever heard of in my life.
The only comparable sentence I can think of goes back to Mac Wallace in the 50s or 60s. He was a LBJ crony. Mm-hmm. And Mac Wallace was convicted in Texas of, they didn't call it first degree murder at the time. They called it like murder or depravity or something like it. It was like the worst of the worst, bad murder. Normally people are executed in Texas. It's kind of known for it. He was sentenced to 5 years probation after being convicted of this murder. So that's the only comparable thing I can think of, because the jury
did he go with the he needed killing defense? Because sometimes that can work in Texas.
No, the jury just said guilty across the board. I mean, apparently he walked onto a golf course. There was a golf coach who was involved with his lover or whatever, and he just gunned the guy down. And then they caught him. I think he had the gun, had everything. It was pretty clear cut, no question. And then the judge was like, "Yeah, 5 years of probation."
So he needed killing. Okay, fine. Yeah, all right.
Yeah. Hey, when it comes to this Young Thug case, there were huge amounts of problems during the trial. That's I think no one can. But I think number one, this is definitely a win for Fannie because not all the defendants got off so easy. There's like a guy who actually got sentenced to 40 years in prison. So not everybody just got off. I will say though, it was one hell of a strategy to go in and say we're just going to plead to everything, and let's throw ourselves at the mercy of the judge.
Bold move.
See what happens.
Very bold move.
Okay,
I literally laughed in their face when he suggested I can still do concerts, and then the judge did one better on me. Not only can you still do concerts, but they count towards your probation. I was like, okay, well, that's nice.
Let me before the judge handed down a sentence. Let me tell you. Let me just read out the charges he pled guilty to. Matter of fact, all of these are major Class A felonies. So these are some of the top felonies. Count 1, RICO conspiracy. That can get you 20 years to life. That alone, right? Mm-hmm. He pleaded no contest to that. So in other words, a guilty plea. The second no contest was he was the leader of the gang. He pleaded no contest to that, essentially meaning that there's a factual basis belief he was the leader of the gang, blah, blah, blah. Another major felony. The next one is gang participation. Another major felony, but he played straight up guilty to that one. Straight up guilty. These are the ones he played guilty to. Drug possession, possession of marijuana with intent to distribute, possession of codeine with intent to distribute, possession of cocaine. Guilty. He also pled guilty to possessing a firearm in a commission of a felony. That's another major crime.
Yeah, that's a big one to take a plea to.
He says, "I'm guilty. I did it." This is not no contest. This is I did it. I'm guilty.
Wasn't it a machine gun specifically?
This is the last one. Count number 62, possession of a machine gun, which gets you 5 years in prison. He pleaded guilty to that. So, for some now,
who doesn't have a wait?
Well, now Ian, you might
soon.
I need everybody,
very soon.
I need everybody to understand this. Pleading guilty to all that, saying yes, I did all that. That's everything I did. The judge, if that was anybody else on the planet, in any other jurisdiction on the planet, you don't walk out of that without any jail time. Now, the judge, just so we understand the sentence. So Young Thug, while the trial has been going on for about 2.5 years, from when he's arrested to now sentencing. So 2.5 years he served in confinement. The judge essentially said, I'm giving you time served for all of what I just said. The 2.5 years, she said is time served. I'm giving you time served for that. And I'm gonna give you 15 years probation. So he's not really doing it. So she said, well, I'm giving you 20 and I'm giving you 5 in and 15 on probation. But the 5 in is really, I'm crediting you with the 2.5 years you already been in. So it's half of that. So it's even worse than we thought. Now, with all of that, he walks out of prison for 15. And then his probation, obviously he has what they call a back-end probation, where if he violates his probation, he has to do like 25 years. But the judge gets to decide. So he goes back in front of that same judge and says, hey, judge, I made a mistake, blah, blah, blah. All right, we're not going to violate you this time. We'll let you go. We'll continue on. And that's essentially what's happening here. So the prosecutor asked for 25 years on these charges. Anybody else is going to get at least 25 years on all these charges. So I personally, I don't like Fannie Willis. I don't like what's going on in Atlanta. I think that it's horrible, but the guy copped to everything. And this is not justice. I understand it's going to be great for his fans and great for this.
Maybe get another Grammy.
This
he will.
Nothing.
You'll absolutely get an award out of this.
There were so many places though where this should have been dismissed with prejudice, just thrown.
I think it's a very valid argument.
Even if I agree with you, if you cop to everything and it goes to the judge,
right? Why not just say fight, for a mistrial or for it to be thrown? But he said, "I'm guilty." I mean, last time I checked, if you say you're guilty, that usually comes with a penalty.
Yeah, there have been some unusual cases in Canada. I don't know about the US where somebody's gone and pled guilty and the judge has said, nope, you're acquitted, which looks really bad for a defense lawyer when that happens.
No, that's it. That can definitely happen. I definitely understand that. But it's just this, I think, shows definitely how people of means are treated with the criminal justice system, and people who don't have young thug money are treated by the criminal justice system, right? I can't go in and say, I got to do concerts all around the world. I got to be hanging out with felons because I got contracts with them and I got to make more money with them. You know what? I'm going to do 4 benefit concerts a year. All of that is rich people stuff, right? Those are rich people problems. Someone like me, Kurt, or anybody on this panel, we go in front of that judge. I can't say, well, I'm going to do concerts all around the world.
I don't know, Nate, you're like, pretty famous.
Are you crazy? Are you insane? No.
I've got to be on YouTube.
I got to be on YouTube. The judge's argument here is that society will be served better for young thug to be out mentoring.
Oh, as an example? Yeah. How is it served better when his example is you can plead guilty to murder and everything else, or RICO, whatever, all of his charges, and then you can get scot-free? How is society served better? Is that not an example saying, okay, so just become a big enough rap star and you could do any damn thing you want? Is that the message?
Pretty much.
That's
right now, Diddy is going, everything's coming.
Why don't we do the young thug thing? Let's see what happens. Right?
And by the way, Nate, you're right about the haves and have not. There's a reverse corollary to that too. Mark and I have been talking about in AUS a bit. Have you ever noticed how, there are people who are dying of overdoses every day all over this country, and it's a horrible tragedy. However, if Matthew Perry dies, we need to have a full-blown investigation, pry up every dealer who might have crossed his path, find out the entire pipeline, and we got to get a conviction because his life matters. All you other people who have died of overdoses, who cares? You're just garbage. You can just die. And it's a very sad state of affairs that if somebody, and I think it's going on right now, I believe it's in Argentina, didn't the One Direction guy or whatever it is, didn't he die from falling from a balcony, and he was full with all kinds of substances, and now guess what? They're rolling up the streets. Where did he get them? How did he get this? And it happens over and over and over. So I do think it's a sad 2-tiered justice system in many ways. How is it in Canada, Ian? Is it similar?
Similar, although they'll get the small fish too, but the thing is they won't look very hard. So where you have a case where there's somebody who's died of an overdose and they've got something that just drops in their lap, like there's a cell message from the dealer as they're taking away the body, and it's like, so how was that new stuff I just sold you? Was that really great? Then they might go after that dealer, because he's just kind of dropped in their lap. But where it's although in Canada it tends to be more where something is politically big. So they'll have cases. We had a case, a guy was accused by a whole bunch of people of various, sexual offenses. He was acquitted because it was found that the various accusers had all sort of had meetings and discussed what they were going to say and, kind of worked together. And afterwards, the government was so upset that he was acquitted that they changed the law to try to make it so no one could be acquitted in his case again. And his case was people worked together to corrupt their testimony. It's that's a situation where somebody should be acquitted. So yeah. And I'm going through transcripts for another big case, which was a self-defense-ish. It's not really self-defense because he says it was an accidental shooting. But because the victim on that one was an Indigenous kid, and initially the facts were badly misreported by the media. This is the Gerald Stanley case. The media initially said that these kids were, that they had a flat tire and that they were looking for help with their tire. They pull up onto this farmer's property and he just, shoots one in the head.
Oh, you mean like hands up, don't shoot type?
Well, the thing is what actually was going on is that they were in a truck stealing from properties, going from property to property. And
of course they were.
But this guy comes out, he fires several warning shots into the air. And the interesting thing was that his argument was that it was a hang fire, that he didn't intentionally shoot the guy. And everybody was like, oh, this is such a, an insane thing. And they actually changed how juries are selected here in Canada as a result of this.
Oh, wow.
But the Crown's own expert said that the defense theory was possible. And so when you've got the prosecution expert saying, yeah, what the defense is saying is possible, and not just possible, but explains a bit of evidence that was otherwise very difficult to explain, it was very clear that the fatal shot was fired out of battery. And so it's hard to get a gun to shoot out of battery. They're not supposed to. So they ended up changing the law. And it's this kid gets this national attention, and we've got to change the law and everything else. But there's hundreds of other people dying in all sorts of things. And it's like, who cares? That's just like, that's just how the system works. And so, absolutely.
While we're on the system, I know you've been covering Alec Baldwin. I've kind of pulled away from it for the most part. I know that Carrie Morrissey filed a affidavit, something to the judge saying, hey, please change your mind. The judge said, no, I'm not going to change my mind from what I understand. Do you want to break down what exactly has gone down since the it's very surprising outcome of the Alec Baldwin trial?
I mean, so Alec Baldwin, it gets dismissed with prejudice at the trial based on this suppression. I'm not sure that was the right call by the judge, but it wasn't the wrong call, if that makes sense. It's within the range of acceptable calls. And Carrie Morrissey did not take it well. So she files a motion to reconsider that is way over the page limits. And she files it on the last day, which is always a bad idea. Anytime you have a deadline, get it in early in case you walk up and a clerk is like, I'm not taking this.
Yeah.
But she files it on the last day, and the response from the court is, sorry, too many pages. I'm not taking this.
Fair enough.
So, which was a pretty strong hint to Morrissey that like the court is done with this. And it's kind of a polite, just walk away. Like anybody else would have understood the subtext of like, walk away. But she doesn't walk away. She files a follow-up, which is under page limits, but she also now asks for permission for the over page limit version. And there's a response to that, which is basically you're out of time, your arguments are crap, and so forth. Like I don't think they put a whole lot of work into the response, honestly, because I think they realized that they didn't have to.
So they're saying cry harder or pound sand?
Pretty much was the response from Baldwin's team. Like, you guys could have made these arguments, you didn't, and you're out of time, and yeah. So the court comes back, and the court's response is to deny the motion, and that's the end of it. But not just to deny the motion. They deny the motion, and they also quote Morrissey extensively in using her own arguments to deny her motion. And so it's like,
that's good.
Hey, not only, is this a BS argument, but it's a BS argument. They say, the court says, sorry, you are actually out of time. We're not accepting your late filing. And also points out, because one of her arguments was, even if you don't accept my late filing or my filing because it was over page limit, you still have to look at the first 10 pages. And the court says, well, because you were so wordy, you spent 10 pages explaining to the court the things we already knew about the procedural history. And so you didn't actually get to an argument in 10 pages. Ooh. So even if I look at your first 10 pages, you have nothing. So, and this is like a page limit issues can be super serious. At the Court of Appeal where I am, I have seen the court quite literally take somebody's factum, tear off the last pages, and set them aside and say, you get to argue with this. You were allowed 30 pages. You submitted 50. you cannot refer to anything past this
Ooh.
point. And if your
Love it.
argument isn't in there,
Sucks to be you. Wow.
yep. It was so. And the other problem is her writing. Like, she has done some great lawyering in this case, but her writing was really on the bad side. And it really seemed like it was rage written rather than somebody's taking the time.
She's the calmest person I've ever known. Famously calm.
There's a place where you really need to have a friend who you can say, like, hey, have I nailed the tone on this one, or am I too hot? You know, what's coming in? And I don't think she ran that past anybody for editorial stuff, which, given that her reputation is on the line, but I mean, she should have just walked away. It was so the thing to do. And I mean, I think Baldwin should, like, in a perfect world, Baldwin should have faced his trial. And I think there's good reason for him to have criminal liability on this one. Now, that's a whole, like, lots of people disagree and lots of people have all sorts of takes on it. But ages ago, I did a video talking about the whole Rust trials. And I said, if these things fall apart, it's gonna be because Morrissey is playing fast and loose with the requirements. And later I was like, wow, I predicted that. So it's
on the flip side, Ian, I believe Hannah is staying in, right? She tried to file, but hers fell apart, right?
And the problem is that Bowles is not good at what he does. Bowles's submissions were bad, and he really tries to tie, like, well, Baldwin's walking, but he is not in a good place to actually make the arguments because he knew about that evidence. So and the court said, you don't get to say you didn't know about this evidence because you knew about it. You chose not to use it. You had it there to use at the trial, and you said, nah, go home. That puts him in a very different spot. But, I mean, I feel bad for Bowles in some ways because he has one of the worst possible clients.
She did herself in, because I remember they were negotiating a lighter sentence for her, but then they got the recorded phone calls where she just really did not help her case.
Bowles' sentencing submissions were great. His arguments for why she should get a lighter sentence, really good sentencing submissions. The problem is that Morrissey didn't even have to lift much of a finger on that one. She's just like, yeah, that's cool, but transcripts and criminal defense, it happens. You end up where you do all the work and your client just blows it up. But for her being on the phone, I think the judge could easily have said, yeah, we're going with, like, probation and out you go.
Yeah, even Carrie Morrissey seemed, now I don't know if she was playing the routine, seemed like she was going to negotiate as well, like, ask for 10 months or something, or, some variant of it.
I suspect that if they didn't have those recordings, there would have been a basis to come to a sentencing agreement even after the conviction. But I mean, what do you do with those recordings? They were abhorrent, right? Oh, I don't have to check every round. It's like, no, that is literally your job. It is the reason why you were there.
This is going to ruin my modeling career.
Yeah. And, like, blaming the family of the deceased for not coming to your aid. It's like, they don't owe you a damn thing. I'm sorry.
It is cringe. I need to get a couple super chats. I passed over. I apologize. You guys can answer us. What's going to happen to Woody after acting the fool in Young Thug? I don't know if he acted the fool. It sounded like he was responding directly to the prosecution's shenanigans while he was on the stand.
Yeah, I think everything is probably going to be forgotten because he did everything he wanted to make sure he wasn't a snitch. So, I don't think he's going to have any problems. I think the problems from this case because this case became political because of the Fannie Willis thing. So I think if you think about it from that perspective of Republican Democrat, it's a good look if you're supporting Trump. It's a good look because hey, this is a disaster for Fannie Willis. But Fannie Willis's people want to come out and say this was a great victory.
We got a conviction.
I got him to plead to the top counts. It's the liberal, ridiculous judge who needs to be voted out that needs it. So I think that's probably going to be an issue. And I'll say this: I people are going to still say no, this was a good outcome. I don't think this was a good outcome. if because he's saying I did all this stuff just for the gun charges and the drug charges alone, he should be in jail. So.
This is a question. Maybe you guys can discuss this because I don't know. When would you recommend an Alford plea, and when would you not recommend an Alford plea? And I don't know what the equivalent is in Canada, Ian.
The equivalent is you plead guilty or you get a trial.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, they don't do Alford pleas there, huh?
There's no contest.
Nope. It's just there is some room for like I was too drunk to know what happened, and so I'm agreeing that this happened, but I don't actually know. But that's just a guilty plea, and you put that on record, and then that maybe gets considered by the court in sentencing. But you can't be like, just the no contest is just not available.
No contests are essentially guilty pleas here too. In other words, but you're not saying I did it. You're saying the evidence is so overwhelming that I'm going to get convicted, so treat it as if I did it.
The only way it makes a practical difference is in civil liability, because a guilty plea is an admission, which can be used against you in a civil context, whereas an Alford plea or a no contest plea, you're not admitting to doing it, so you can't use the admission that doesn't exist in the civil context. So the only advantage to it is civil liability.
So is that a propensity question, Kurt? Like if you admit that you did it in civil, the next case it can be used against you. Look, they admitted doing this, they admitted doing that, but if they don't admit it, is that what you're saying? I just want to clarify.
Well, you're admitting to the facts, and you're admitting that the facts are true and that you did the crime. So if you were being sued for, I don't know, wrongful death, right, and you pled guilty to homicide or some sort of a homicide charge, so you're basically saying that all these facts are true, and you're also saying that you're responsible for that. So that's an admission, right? And so that admission can be used against you in the civil context. So when I turn around and sue you for wrongful death, you can be like, yeah, he said that he did things. He said that he was responsible for the things. So if he's, responsible for that, he's obviously liable for it in the civil context. So it's, it's a statement that can be used against you in a future proceeding. That's what I'm saying.
But I do want to make very clear for the no contest plea. Generally, you have to admit that there's a factual basis for the charges.
Right.
So you don't have to plead guilty, but you got to say there's a factual basis for the charges, and I can't fight this because it's just overwhelming. So in that certain, but like Kurt's saying, you're not.
Well, I thought that to clarify, Nate, I thought that saying no contest is like the evidence they have makes me look guilty, and there's no way I can fight it. But that I really didn't do. But yeah, I give up. Okay, they're going to bury me with this garbage, but I didn't do it. That would seem to be what no contest is in my mind. But
and then the next thing they're going to ask you is, well, do you agree that there was a factual basis for them to bring these charges? And you have to say yes, right? Because if you say no,
right,
then
they have to find the factual basis.
Yeah, you have.
And we saw that yesterday, for example, where they asked about the factual basis, and the judge agreed there was a factual basis.
Yeah.
So they all agree there's a factual basis.
I'm not trying to be pedantic. I mean, literally, what do you mean by factual basis? Is just saying that there's legitimate evidence here that makes me look terrible, but again, it's not saying I actually did it.
You just described what a factual basis is.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't know.
No. I'm just saying. I like how you defined it. You literally defined it. I'm like, yeah. Then what you just said is exactly what it is.
Okay. Fair enough. I don't know. Somebody requested in the chat or somewhere they were saying Daniel Penny. Is anybody following that?
I've been following that like crazy. So go ahead.
I was gonna say, opening arguments are today. They finally got their jury sorted out.
And now everybody's upset because 2 people on the jury said they were attacked in a subway. So now they're like, oh, they're setting it up for him to be found not guilty.
Is that trial being streamed?
No, it's not. If it was being streamed,
I'd love to cover that one. Damn.
So everybody know this is a Rittenhouse case, essentially. So a guy gets on the train in New York going to Manhattan. Homeless guy gets on the train. He's a Michael Jackson impersonator. He's just been let out of jail. He gets on the train. He takes his jacket off, throws it down at the seat in between a couple of passengers, and starts screaming things like, "I want food. I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'll hurt anybody in this train. I don't care if I get a life sentence. People are going to die, yada, yada, yada." So everybody in this, and while he's saying these threatening things to all the passengers, he's walking up and down the aisle very manically, like, I can't wait. Give me some money. Give me some food. Blah, 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 blah. So everybody on the train starts getting scared. So three men on that train grab the guy because he's like, acting so wild. They grab him. Two guys happen to be minorities and one guy happens to be white. The white guy comes up behind him and puts him in essentially a headlock, but it also can be considered a rear naked choke where you're just like a sleeper hold. You're behind the person. And the other two guys, one guy holds his feet, the second guy holds his arms. So they're holding his feet in his arms and he's fighting all the way. So for about 15 minutes, they're struggling with this guy until police come. Witnesses say that he was struggling all the way.
Is there a video of it, Nick?
Yes, there's a video.
Oh yeah, there's a whole video of it.
Eventually, he stopped moving. They let him go and put him in what's known as a recovery position, for those of you who know CPR. So he stops moving. Police get to the scene, speak to all the witnesses, black, white, green, whatever. They all say the same thing. This guy was scaring us we thought he was going to do some crazy stuff. After they interviewed all the witnesses at the scene, they let the guy go, let all three men go, say this is clearly self-defense. This is just an unfortunate accident. BLM protests happened in New York. They said they want somebody to pay for this not homeless, unhoused individuals' rights.
Oh yeah, God.
Yes.
New terms
yeah.
every week.
Yes.
He was and it's like, and 10 years ago, yes, he was he got to pretend to be Michael Jackson on the subway, and he was just this lovable guy when he wasn't cracked out of his mind and screaming like a lunatic at people. Yes, he was this lovable street performer. And it's like,
I don't care if that
Apparently
was correct yesterday. I really care about what happens today.
yeah, but that was part of the narrative. Like, oh, he's just a nice boy.
So the district attorney
could have been someone's son.
So the district attorney then goes and says,
I get that one too.
I'm going to file manslaughter charges. But so they filed manslaughter charges against the white guy, obviously, because he's white. But the two minorities, they say, we're not going to file charges. So it's funny because even people in the black community was like, well, why don't you file charges against all three? Because this is a gang assault, right? You got one person behind him and two people holding his arms.
Oh my God.
It's a clear, you got to charge all three. How can you just charge one? So essentially they've made this thing where the two holding his arms and legs were kind of a self-defense mode, but the person holding him by the head wasn't self-defense. So
what?
So they charge, so the people holding the arms and legs, they get self-defense, so they got to charge them. And the person on the rear naked choke, they're saying it wasn't self-defense.
Let me guess, they're going to call the two self-defense guys trying to get them to flip on Penny, right?
But they haven't. They're not flipping. They're all saying the same thing. So
if there's ever a case for a jury nullification,
the defense
this
might
would
call them even without a deal. Just to spite them at this point.
So they were trying to get a deal. There's no deal, so they're going to trial. Penny has raised over $2 million for a legal defense fund. It's a Rittenhouse all over again. But the issue here is now two issues. One, is this a political prosecution? Is the prosecution race-based? Because
yes.
Should the other two men also be charged? So those are the questions coming out of the Penny case, and I'll say Penny should be found not guilty. This was obviously not only self-defense but defense of others, and with all the witnesses. And I clearly don't understand why they prosecute him. But to be fair, they do have probable cause to prosecute. And the question that they're asking the jury was, did Penny use unreasonable force to restrain them versus reasonable amount of force? And that's where you get your manslaughter. Well, actually, that's where you get your criminal negligent homicide, that's what they're really trying to get. And if he's found guilty on a criminal negligent homicide, he can get between 2 to 10 years in prison.
Did it go through a grand jury?
Yes, grand jury did that because again,
more proof about ham sandwiches, right?
Well, no, because if you think about the facts of the case, you do get See, people forget probable cause is so low. Based on the facts of the case, you should get an indictment, right? He was in a rear naked choke. He did die. Was it? And now, if the question is a factual question, like in this case, on whether the force was reasonable or unreasonable, that's not a question. It's a question of fact for the jury, and that's what they're going for.
And also remember, Eric, they're not bringing in that whole train car people who said, "Holy cow, I thought we were going to die."
Well, okay, I question why charges were brought
Yeah.
to begin with, because that
Yeah.
is to me nothing more than harassing an individual and destroying someone's life. I don't care
Mhm.
how much money he's raising with GoFundMe or Gifts and Go or anything else. His life
Yeah.
is ruined when he was trying to literally
Do the right thing.
and protect people around him. That's insane. It
Oh,
is
yeah, and-
horrible.
One
Well, and
last
the
thing I
guys-
forgot to mention. They did a toxicology on the guy who died. He was actually hallucinating and high from K2. So that also came out. So he was like, so he didn't even know what he was doing at the time.
What is
So they-
K2 by ketamine?
Bath salts.
It's a
Yeah.
it's a mountain in Africa.
Oh God, bath salts. Is that?
Yeah,
I
so it's
remember
like
when
bath
they
salts
ate-
and all
ate
that
people's
crud.
faces and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
K2 is absolute. Like his
Ugh.
brain was probably fried.
And the other fun thing is
Also,
that the guy's
Kurt,
become a bit of a
real-
meme.
I got a geography this because I'm a nerd. Kurt, actually, K2 is in Asia. not
Go, Joe. You've been silent forever. Joe's got to talk now. Come on.
I have three very short points about what Nate just said. Number one is technically it's defense of others, not self-defense, but it's the yardstick for as far how much protection that affords is precisely the same yardstick.
Hold on. If he's one of the people who could have been a potential victim, wouldn't it be self-defense as well as defense of others?
Yeah, he's using both. He's saying it's
Is
self-defense
he?
and defense.
And defensive. Okay.
Yeah,
All
he's
right,
saying
I mean,
it's both, but you can get
Self-defense.
you're right.
Yeah, but self. I mean, okay. Second thing I would say is I kind of agree with Nate that it makes sense for the grand jury to find him to say there's probable cause here and to say that a trial should happen, because I'm sure they weren't presented the video. They likely were not presented the video. They just told guy gets on a train and yells a little
Gets
bit,
choked out.
and now he's dead because this guy choked him to death. Should you go to trial or not? And if you're not looking at the video and you just hear the overarching theme of the story, you can understand. You say, you know what, we should have a trial and see whether or not this guy was murdered or whether there actually was, what the justification was for the guy killing him. So I wouldn't blame the grand jury here at all. If anything, I would blame the prosecutor because they have access to the video, and the video is fairly exonerating for the defendants in this case. The third thing I would say is if you've never been on a subway in New York, you have no idea how much you can have the bejesus scared out of you by some of the lunatics who walk them
I
down.
have been on a subway in
I've
New
been in
York.
that situation. I've been in that situation before where you have a lunatic screaming and cursing and threatening people, and it can be like very scary because you feel like you're in a prison cell. Where there's
Remember Bernard
there's no
Goetz?
police around, there's no guards around, and you're trapped there for however long it takes you to get to the next station. And frequently the subway will just stop in the middle between stations for a good 3-5 minutes at a time. You could be stuck in there for like 10 minutes with some raving lunatic, and it could be really, and most people don't want to step up for others. So if the guy happens to target you, it's like, good luck. Because for all you know, he's got a knife, he's got a gun, you don't know what he is. And and you're stuck in this quasi prison cell. I've had that situation before where I had someone threatening me for absolutely no reason at all, literally like taunting, like are you for the white man? And he's like walks up to me and just starts like pointing at my head.
Well, Joe, hold on. Are you?
Joe's like, yes, I am.
You didn't answer the question.
It was all black. It was all black people. And I'll tell you right now, I was so stupid then. I was 23 at the time, and I was with two friends of mine. We were the only 3 white people on a train, which had like 150 black people, and this guy was like chanting that, and he started pointing at my head, and he was a little guy, like he was like 5'6" or something like that. So I sort of stood up to give him some presents, and my friend yelled at me when we got off the train. He's like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" I was like, I was like, "What?" I just wanted him to realize that he was smaller than me. He's like, "You don't know if he has a knife. You know what the hell he's got there." So I said, "What would you have done if you were sitting where I was sitting?" He's like, "I would have sat there very calmly and urinated on myself."
Okay, well, that
I guess that was another option.
That makes me think of Steve Martin back when he was a stand-up comedian, when he talked about how he dealt with crime in San Francisco because it was bad back in the 70s again. Then it got better, and now it's back again. And he said that he had a perfect method to deal with people mugging him. He would take his $10 bill and pee all over it or whatever.
But yeah, I think Nate and Joe and Kurt, you guys have mentioned it. Thankfully, I haven't had that opportunity. When I was in New York City, everybody was really nice to me, except for the Black Hebrew Israelites at Times Square screaming at me that I was the white devil. And I was confused. I was like 15. I'm like, what did I do? But I think, a Manhattan jury is going to had that experience. Or if they happen to be hoity-toity enough, they only have a car service. There's a reason why they have a car service. And yeah, they know about all this. They know about the people getting shoved out onto the tracks, all the different things that are going on down there. Yeah, if he doesn't get acquitted, I easily see a hung jury.
There was a thing on Twitter about 3 weeks ago where some woman was accosted by several guys, and there was a ton of people who were like, why did no one stand up? And guess whose face got posted
Elon
over and
posted
over
that.
and over as like, this is why we don't stand up, is that, if you do, you can't win, right?
Well,
yeah.
But I do want to mention. I think it's very, 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 especially talking about this case, to mention a couple of more facts that we shouldn't really consider into the determination of guilt or innocence, but would color under our understanding of everything that happened. This person had attacked had 40-something arrests, with multiple violent attacks on the subway system, including breaking a 67-year-old woman's nose,
he's nuts,
pushing somebody onto the train tracks, and other assaults in the subway. But the reason why I didn't mention that earlier is because we shouldn't consider that in terms, because Daniel Penny didn't know that at the time of the incident. So now that you know that, now it should be an obvious not guilty, but I don't think the jury's going to be able to know that either.
You're right about that. However, the culture in New York is a recognition. There is a change, and I don't go on the subway nearly as much as I did back then. I'll go twice a year because I'm going out to court or something like that. But there's a change in the culture in the subway because there has been a spate over the last decade or so that never happened before in New York, where it's like not an uncommon thing for some lunatic to literally run up behind someone and shove them into the tracks when a train is coming.
Hold on, Joe. If I recall, Bernard Goetz existed in the 80s. Things were really, really bad back then. I'm just saying.
Not what I just described.
Okay.
What I just described was you're standing on a platform, trains coming in, and a lunatic shoves you into the tracks. This is a completely weird situation. It used to be when we were waiting for a subway throughout my life, when the train's coming in, everyone would sort of come up to like there's a thick yellow line which is at the edge of the platform there, which they tell you stand back from the yellow line. The yellow line is roughly 2.5-3 feet wide, and everyone would go up to that 3-foot line. Now, nobody does that. Nobody goes within 8 feet of the yellow line when a train is coming in, because there's so much recognition that they're literally, you have no idea who's a lunatic here, who for no benefit to themselves at all will literally just shove you into the tracks. This is a whole different subway than what it was like when I was there in the 80s or 90s or aughts. It's a whole different subway now, where there's just they basically close down the asylums, and it's just like, all right, they're just roaming around anywhere and go deal with it. So yeah, it's a terrifying. I thought it was really interesting when the last time I took the subway, trains coming in and everyone is like way back.
After you, please.
It's terrifying. It's really terrifying now. So
wow. Okay, well, fair enough. So, but that's a specific thing. But I do know that
there was always muggings. There was always muggings on the train.
Yeah.
But that was, but not like now. The lunatics are more scary than, let's say, someone who looks like a tough person, or a group of tougher people who look like they're hungry for money. Now it's like some lone wolf lunatic is like, in a way, the scarier threat. That was my point in bringing that up.
Oh, fair enough. Oh, okay, congrats. I mean, I believe you're a city all about diversity and having a wider variety of maniacs. Congratulations.
New York's going to get a better kind of criminal.
Exactly. Exactly.
Hopefully he'll be found not guilty, though, because I think this is a Rittenhouse 2 case.
Amen.
Because if he's found not guilty, it's going to be all hell will break in the city. You know what the scream is going to be, even though the people of the jury happen to be black too. So
the other bad thing is, by charging him, all you did now was you just discouraged anybody from ever being stupid enough to go the Daniel Penny route of standing up for someone else. So you encouraged more lawlessness in the city of New York, in a city where you need people to help others, to help weaker people. And they basically, by doing this, you're an idiot. I mean, I hate to say it, but if you help someone else on the subway, you're an idiot, because all you're doing is you're exposing yourself to physical harm and then legal process harm, and that's a pathetic thing. We should be encouraging good Samaritan type of behavior rather than going out of our way because we're of public pressure or because these screaming lunatics to discourage good Samaritan behavior.
And will this help get people voted out, like the Alvin Braggs, who are happy to prosecute them? Because I feel like you could fix it. You citizens who New York who are voting, congratulations, you voted this in.
But don't forget, this is his whole campaign was, I'm going to convict Trump.
Yeah.
And he convicted Trump. So now he's going to be running on, guess what? I did exactly what I wanted.
He hasn't convicted him. He got 34 guilty verdicts. He hasn't convicted him yet.
That's true. That's true. He's got 34 guilty verdicts. Not a technical conviction, even though it's.
I don't think he ever will be convicted. I don't think he ever will be convicted.
He'll be sentenced?
I don't think. I think it's more likely. I think it's more likely that this case gets put on hold until the appellate division overturns it. Then he gets conviction. They keep pushing it back and pushing it back.
It depends on Tuesday. A lot depends on Tuesday, I think.
Yes,
it really does.
That's true.
Yeah.
Because even then, I mean, and I do want to address that or ask you guys, theoretically, if he is the president-elect, well, now we're talking about a whole new thing. Does everything get delayed for 4 years?
Yep.
Or
no?
How do you handle that?
Not well.
Great question.
If they do the sentencing before he's inaugurated, they can do it then. But after his inauguration, you can't sentence him. He's not involved in any process. He'll have sovereign immunity at that time.
Well, this
is before January, whenever.
Then he sits in prison until January 20th. And he says,
think of how insane that would be. That in the middle of the transition period, he's supposed to be gearing up to be able to run the country, and instead he's under house arrest or in some cell that they set aside for him in the middle of nowhere.
House arrest, the White House.
The cell would be the funniest because they'll have a cell with like 2 Secret Service guys posted out front.
No, the entire block.
Why would he need Secret Service? There's no threat to him.
Well, just to be clear, until he's sworn in, he doesn't have sovereign immunity. So I think his sentencing is in November after. I think so. He could be sentenced to jail. He would have to go to jail, and then when he's ready to be sworn in, they would have to kind of figure that out.
I don't think
that could be seen as
I don't think he would have the cojones to put the president-elect in prison.
Oh, he does. He'll be making history. His name will be carved.
No man's above the law.
Hold on.
Yes.
Could a judge?
Young Thug.
Okay, question. Yeah, good point. Young Thug walks after saying guilty, but the president-elect is in prison. That would be America. But question: if, let's say, the judge says, "Hell yeah, I'm an activist. I'm going to put him in. I don't give a damn. He's sentenced to this. Take him away." Could a higher court immediately come down? I mean, an emergency.
The federal court's going to stop it because it would interfere too much with his role. So they'd stop it.
They wouldn't have any authority to stop it until he's inaugurated, though.
I don't know about that.
It's affecting his ability.
The office of the president-elect.
No protection.
How is he supposed to transition?
Trump will live stream the parade.
Problems,
how do you stand up in the way of a man trying to transition?
Trump could live stream his inauguration from Rikers Island. That'd be hilarious.
From male to female? I don't know. But
he's in his jumpsuit getting sworn in. That'd be great.
Listen, it's all about authority, though. At the point when he's being sentenced, what authority does he have?
That's correct.
I want to remind you, us all, to not have the hubris to say that we actually know anything, because the way the law operates is you can have all your theories as to like this is the way it should be, or this is the way it should be, or that's the way it should be, but nobody actually knows the way the law is, what the actual rule of law is, until it's ruled on at least one time and a court has stepped in and says, okay, we have this conflict situation.
Yes.
This is how the law operates here. And at that point, that's when it becomes the law. Right now, nobody knows for sure. We could all speculate what it is, what it should be, and based on this law or that law, or this basis, but no one actually knows the law until some judge weighs in. And obviously this type of scenario has never happened in American history. So none of us actually know. We're just really speculating.
And I would hope that a court above them goes like, hey, Judge Merchan, like you bro, like hit the brakes here. Like I really hope that's what would happen.
Behind the scenes.
I agree with Joe, but that's what we're kind of we're taking what's happening. applying it to the law as it is now and saying, well, this is the way, well, I'm saying this is the way it generally should go. But obviously, some higher court may say, hey, the federal court may say, hey, because he's becoming president, but they could be anything. But I'm saying, but as of right now, if you just look at what's happening, he's a private citizen who's being sentenced, even though he's won the election. I don't know what protection he gets just being elected.
Well, there
is no office of the president-elect. It's just
there is something. Well, there is a transition team, and there is certain things with the president-elect. Like they immediately get briefings. The White House briefing comes to them every day, from my recall. And there are certain things. His status does change. He's not officially sworn in until the 20th, obviously, and the 6th is there. But president-elect, things do change.
All right,
like his Secret Service becomes full. I don't know how much.
So let me being president. So Obama tried this. Obama had the little sign, office of the president-elect, and specifically they said there is no office of president-elect. He's a private citizen.
It was a branding
until he gets sworn in on January 20th. He's just a private citizen. So if that is the case, and again, there's going to be the arguments made. I don't know what argument you can make to say we're going to treat him differently, a private citizen differently in this case.
Well, you have
than
to.
Another case,
He's
except
the
fact that he is president-elect, but there's no legal protection for
Nate, he already is different because of the Secret Service protection. So just in of itself, he would have to clear out. He would have to have a prison cell of his own, or like the entire block.
That's legally irrelevant to the sentencing piece of it.
That's not relevant to New York law, is what he's trying to argue.
Well, and once we're talking about technicalities, I'll point out one more thing that none of us have really considered. Technically, even if there were a status change when someone becomes president-elect, he's not president-elect until January 6, 2025.
Yes,
because
that's true too.
So anything that happens, even if everyone's saying he won, even if all the reporting comes in that he has 350 electoral votes, that still wouldn't make him president-elect.
Yeah, because unfaithful electors and whatever.
Until Congress declares him the president-elect, that he's the next president, and then for those 2 weeks he's the president-elect.
And you have Jamie Raskin already threatening to not do that, as an example.
Which that will never happen. No, zero chance.
Well, I do have to slightly correct
if he
you.
wins, I don't think it's going to happen because he'll have to probably win Congress. But I'm sorry.
I believe in Title III it defines president-elect to also include the apparent winner of the general election, as determined, I think, by the General Services Administrator.
Really?
So I believe that there is some designation of the president-elect even before the Electoral College meets.
Really?
Can you
I
find
never
that?
heard of that.
I
never heard of that. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe they're apparent.
Let me see if I can find it. Look it up.
And that would make sense because you would need to be hiring people because it's like 10,000 appointments.
Yes.
So if you got to wait the generation before you do that, that doesn't make
very
sense.
logical what you're both saying. Yeah.
But the thing is though, I do know those appointments can't be, because usually the appointments for like whatever positions are usually made before the president becomes president,
and then
like
they get ratified by the Senate later, right?
Yeah.
But he's still saying, "Hey, I'm offering the job to these people," and then after he's sworn in, they all approve them or don't approve them. Correct?
Yeah, but that's why I think what Joe said makes sense. Is that this is probably one of the most unique situations ever. So nobody really knows how it's going to go. But I do think, as in a practical manner, you can't have the president-elect in prison because he does have a country to run, and you can't have him under house arrest. But I don't know how they're going to legally make that work.
Well, I can see the judge delaying the sentence, right? I mean, does he have the ability to say, I'm delaying sentencing until 2028, January 30th? I mean, could he theoretically do that?
I really want to point out, if the appellate court looks at this case for 10 seconds, I mean, there's so many legal flaws. I mean, really gross abuses as to I'm just on the most basic level. This is something I'm not the first ones to comment on this.
Crime, etc.
No, not victimless crime. What I'm saying is the jury instructions for a finding of guilt were, there's this crime, and this crime says that you cannot steal election by using unlawful means. Well, what is the unlawful means? Well, that means there has to be another crime, right? So in order for them to be found guilty of having a felony, you have to have unlawful means. Well, what are those unlawful means? Well, he said you can pick any of these three crimes as the unlawful means. They're three completely different crimes with different elements. And he said you can pick whichever one. Yes, choose your own adventure as to which one you have. You don't even have to all agree as to what the unlawful means was. You can come to different conclusions about it. And even if you all, and you don't even have to tell each other what it was. You never have to tell us what that unlawful means is. You just have to have a finding you just have to have a finding that there was an unlawful means, and then it's satisfied. Which
that's crazy.
It is. Yes, that's why I'm saying that the appellate court will definitely overturn this, because how do you establish mens rea? You don't have mens rea that the reason he's doing this crime is in order to carry out this unfurther means, the unlawful means, the unlawful agenda. It could be.
You're not talking about mens rea. You're talking about causation, or you're talking
everything.
About
everything. What I'm saying is, but each of those crimes have a different mens rea. Each of them have a different mental state. It's so unconstitutional. It's so ridiculous how it is that he could possibly, this conviction, this guilt verdict can turn into a conviction, that I think that if this thing were to sit around long enough, I think the appellate court has slow walked it because they want to see what happens in the election.
Quick question, Joe. Well, because usually unanimity is required to find finding guilt. But if we don't find unanimously the underlying crime, like for instance, so in the RICO cases, you have to find the underlying.
I'm trying to see what I can do, but I can't get it.
For the RICO cases, you find the underlying crime, but you have to be unanimous, like murder. We all find that there was a murder, and then we all find the RICO. So I don't know how in this case you can pick between the three different crimes, because you can have 2 people say this one, the other 12 people say, or 10 people say this one, and it's not unanimous.
I urge you go through the jury charges. Make a video about it. I'm telling you right now. You go ahead. You'll get you know how to create videos on a far higher level than I do. Go ahead. You'll see that I'm not making this up, and you'll see I'm spot on. That's like what it is that he said. What I'm saying is, it's a crazy thing that how few people appreciate just what a complete perversion of justice his jury charges were. So. Yeah,
I can't read this really well, but Kurt shared this. This is talking about.
So this is This is Title 3 U.S. Code 102. And there's a section here. Oh, there you go. Services and facilities authorized to be provided to the president-elect and the vice president-elect, and then it defines president-elect, and then the administrator is the administrator of general services, referred to as the administrator, is authorized to provide the president-elect and vice president some stuff, including office space and some compensation for members of staff and payment for expenses. And then if you scroll down to
the terms, hold on, I just saw the terms president and president-elect. I think that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, there it is. The terms president-elect and vice president-elect is used in this act shall mean such persons as are the apparent successful candidates for the office of president and vice president, as ascertained by the administrator.
Okay, well,
so the administrator of general services has the power to designate the president-elect before the electoral college meets and give
that makes sense
offices and staff and stuff and pay for it.
Administrator following the general election held to determine the electors. Okay, yeah. So in other words, it's saying we could do all this, but I think this administratively is saying we can give him all the stuff and let him start working before the electoral college
January
actually
6th.
does that. Yeah,
right.
They have to, and they have to, just
and that makes sense.
Feasibility.
It is logical. So I mean, it's interesting that. If that only first came around in 1994, like what were they doing before? But
I think they probably just did it beforehand, and a lot of these things come up because people fight over it, and then I think they have to.
It also could have been on the books for like the last century and just up and modified and tweaked slightly in 1994.
Okay. Well, let's not forget too the earlier before the popular vote thing happened. Remember, it was the House, like George Washington. There was no popular vote. It was the House representatives who picked the president.
Yeah.
So that transition wouldn't have happened until January 6th anyway, because it was the Congress and the Senate who picked the president.
Well, back then we still had a 10th Amendment, so there was a lot less for the president to do than today, when he has to basically he has to dictate how every individual in every situation acts. So there's a lot more for the president to do today, now that we've pretty much abandoned the 10th Amendment.
Hey, what do you guys?
It was also before the 12th Amendment, where the vice president was the runner-up.
That's true, because that was a question. Was the acting president until we could find a new president, or would they take over the term? That was like a big.
I didn't hear Ian. You were saying something.
I was trying to get Midjourney to spit out an image of Trump in prison holding the nuclear football. It's like, is that contraband?
You cannot do a real person.
Yeah.
Use Grok. Trust me, Grok does a good job on images now.
That would be absolutely hilarious. Like I said, he's, hi, Donald John Trump. And he's standing there on Zoom screen. And the guy bangs on his window. Here's your tray, sir.
Me and Eric have bet on the election, but actually we bet on one of the betting sites. It's funny. So the bet is, I bet Trump is going to win the election, but Harris is going to win the popular vote. And they're giving me 5-1 odds for that.
Well, that's
So
pretty good odds.
I think that's a
That's
good
pretty
bet.
good odds.
Yeah, I think that's a good
What's
bet. That Trump wins the election.
Yeah, no, I know,
And
but I
that's
say,
okay.
Eric, are you thinking he's going to win or lose? Okay.
I said just throw it in. I think he's going to pick up popular and electoral.
Oh, you think he gets a popular vote? Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah, he thinks
Well, I
you're gonna
figure
get
if you're
both.
going to make money on a bet, you'll make more money on that bet.
oh yeah, that
I-
one's the one to make money on. Yeah.
Make money on Virginia and New Hampshire.
New
Well,
Hampshire.
that-
actually slipped
I'm
Trump.
in Virginia.
And remember to go
and-
vote, people. I
Amen.
voted. Here's my sticker. I voted. Remember to go
I did
vote.
too.
Vote, you pieces of garbage.
I'm sorry, I won't be voting in this election.
Yeah.
Ah, well, there you go.
Hey,
Well,
Runkle, hey, a
you have your
Canadian
own
or a
issues up
Chinese-
there.
A Chinese guy voted up in Michigan. You can vote too, and
It's
his vote
funny
counts
just how-
still.
It's funny
Apparently,
how
you can.
irate people
Apparently, you
get.
can be a non-citizen and at least get on the voter rolls in Virginia.
Yeah, as long as you get the vote in, and once it gets through the
Wow.
tabulator, you're safe because the vote
Yeah.
can't be taken back.
Well, okay. Well, while we're on that, I'm just curious, and it doesn't matter who anybody actually supports. Who do you think will win? Like, I was saying, bet wise, it just seemed trajectory wise, or momentum wise, that Donald Trump can pick up the popular vote. It'd be the first time since 2004 a Republican has done it. But I'm just curious what the outcome as of today, like if the vote was held today, because this is so crazy, anything can change tomorrow. Starting with you, Kurt, what do you think the outcome is if the vote was held today?
I think Trump is slightly favored. Nate Silver, as of today, was saying 53%, and I think that's probably roughly correct. So I think Trump is slightly
Electoral
favored.
both.
Oh, for both?
Electoral both.
If he manages to win the popular vote, it'll be amazing, but it will be by the thinnest of margins. But
Sure.
I think the safer bet is that he loses the popular vote.
Okay, and Nate, you bet on the other.
Yeah, I'm strictly. I think Trump is definitely going to win. I think the popular vote, but I will say this: I'm not as confident as the bet sounds. So I think Trump is probably slightly up, but I think there's one of those elections where Trump, even though he's slightly up in the polls, he could clear the board. Like he can win all the swing states.
Oh, I think
But
he might.
it really depends on what happens that night. But he can get up to 350 electoral votes, or he could just get 272. But I think it's going to be one of those things where it's like it's not if he wins, it's just how much he wins by.
Well, the reason why I'm leaning in, saying I think he might get the popular vote is because the margins in places like California, in New York, in Virginia, he probably won't win Virginia, but it's tight enough that she's pulling money out of North Carolina. And again, for the popular vote, is just he's got to shrink the margins in these other states. Why did he go to California? Why did he go to the Madison Square Garden? So the moves he's making kind of give me a vibe that something underneath may be happening, and it doesn't take that much if he wins all that. So electorally, I think it's pretty much in his favor, but I think it's entirely possible that he wins the popular vote, judging by the moves that he's making. But again, that's just my opinion.
Well, just even with that though, he's up like Harris is up by like 24 points in California.
I know, but she
And-
would have
and
been
then-
normally
then if
up 35 points.
Then,
So
then
that's
if-
all
but
I'm
then,
saying.
But
is
then
it-
if you go,
it's
but
a-
then I think you got to also look at Trump's biggest state, which is Texas. Trump's generally should be up 10 points in Texas, but he's only up 4 or 5.
I think he probably
so-
will wind up with 10, though.
Well, again, it's favorably thinking, but right now, if you think about it, it seems like the popular vote, especially it being so close in Texas, I just think the popular vote is a non-starter. I think she's got the popular
All right,
vote.
well,
So-
Sean, what do you think?
I think that and Joe, by the way, we have matching hats today. No, I think he wins. I think he gets.
I'll get the
north of
little
300.
hat also.
Hold on, what? Go on.
Well, yeah,
Sean?
I get one of these. There you go.
I didn't know they did Trump branded
Ooh,
those.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
There it is.
There you go.
Joe's got it.
I think he. Well, that's funny because there's a Reformed synagogue nearby. I can wear that over there.
There you go.
No, I think he wins. I think he gets probably around 300 electoral votes. I don't know if he's going to blow it out of the water, but I think he gets at least 300. I think he's it sounds like Wisconsin is kind of Harris, like they claim Harris is up, but it sounds like Harris has abandoned Wisconsin a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't think he's getting Minnesota, but apparently Nevada's looking really good. Early voting there is getting blown out of the water. Arizona, is
North
looking pretty
Carolina.
good. Although it looks like Carrie Lake, I don't know if she's going to win there.
He's doing surprisingly well in Georgia, it seems to me.
Oh, Georgia, Trump's
Georgia,
like
yeah.
up by a couple of points. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's
And-
like, what happened there? Wow.
I just think people like, I don't know, something. They came to their senses down in Georgia.
Well, if he has all the
Yes.
Sun Belts, all he needs is one in the blue wall.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
and
it
I
is.
think he
Doesn't
gets
even
Pennsylvania too.
Pennsylvania,
I think he gets Pennsylvania.
I think he gets Pennsylvania. Yeah.
So,
what
I don't
about
think he'll win the
Pennsylvania?
popular vote, but this
Okay.
time around, it's going to be. It's probably going to be within a couple million of each other.
Are we all streaming
So-
together election night?
I'm going to be in Boca Raton doing a live show for America's Untold Stories, and we have Rich Bears calling in, Nate the
Oh, nice.
Lawyer calling in, Dr. Drew, Alex Stein 99 will be calling in from the Kamala Harris headquarters.
Nice.
It's going to be a crazy ass evening, but it's a full blown live meetup.
Nice.
That's what we are doing. But Joe, what is your prediction?
People get mad at me when I give my prediction.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, no, they get mad at me because they sort of feel, they're like, don't jinx it, Joe. Don't jinx it, Joe. I think I'm going to start with this. I think there's zero chance he wins Michigan. Because I think Gretchen Whitmer has rigged that election where they have an extra 1.2 million people at least on their voting rolls, which are like including supposedly that they have 16,000 people, centenarians, how do you call it? Like someone who's 100, there's 16,000 people who are over 100 years old on their voting rolls. And so their SSI figures show that there's only 2,200 people in the state who are actually over 100. That's how they have that's how pathetic their voting rolls are, which they purposefully have not cleaned up. And she changed the law in Michigan to make it impossible for their legislature to investigate fraud, and only Jocelyn Benson, her right hand, her henchman, that's her Igor, is able to actually investigate fraud. So they've set it up that if she literally printed out a million Democrat votes, there's no way to stop her. And that's why, for now, at least, I think Michigan is a lost cause. That being said, I still think that he's going to get 350 electoral votes. I think he's taking the national vote. I think that you're right. California, the percentages are grossly favoring Kamala Harris. But what people miss out on that's most significant is I don't care how people feel. I care about how people vote. And enthusiasm is what brings people out to vote. We had a week right now at the most perfect time for Trump where MAGA was as incentivized as possible to give an FU vote to Team Harris. You had them being labeled Nazis. They were labeled garbage by the president of the United States, Nazis by the vice presidential candidate for the Democrats, and by the entire media, garbage by the president of the United States, and a top surrogate saying that Trump surrounds himself with no women who have strength and intelligence. They are so riled up to come out. So yeah, it all that matters is what percentage of people are actually motivated, saying I'm going out there. And I think right now people who are supporting Harris have a fear of Trump that there's basically been ginned up in them. But you look at MAGA, they will crawl through broken glass to go vote for him right now because they are so pissed off. And frankly, because of border security issues, because of terrifying fear about the economy and how disastrous it's become under the current administration. And that's why the motivated enthusiasm, I think, is not only going to give him the popular vote. I think that we're going to look back at this as being a massive landslide, with one outlier being Michigan, where crazy Whitmer is just basically unchecked in the tyranny that she rains down on that poor state. That's my thought. But Ian, what's your thought?
As a Canadian, I'm just going to defer to the Lorical on this one.
I think everybody makes great points. I got to say, everybody makes great points. But I think I don't think the popular vote is Trump is going to win. But I do think I think the problem that we're all forgetting is that we kind of live in our bubble, and our bubble is we essentially want Trump to win. And I think also Trump, the problem with Trump is that if he was a traditional candidate, I think everything Joe's saying is correct. And I think everybody's saying, but the problem, he's not. And he drives out nobody's going out to vote for Kamala Harris, they're going to vote against Trump.
That's
so
true.
he's driving the Democrats out to vote. Now, for Joe Biden, he was the best driver because nobody was going to vote for Joe Biden. So I think in that, the more people he gets to drive out to the polls on his side, it also helps the Democrats. So now it all depends on, like you're saying, enthusiasm. Are people enthusiastic for Kamala Harris? I don't think so. If you look at the way when Kamala went on Club Shay Shay to try to compete with Trump going on Joe Rogan. The Joe Rogan is like at 70 million views. The Club Shay Shay is at 1. So I think it's that type of thing.
Well, not only that, you know who outperformed it too, Nate? Check out JD Vance's interview with Rogan yesterday, which blew away the Club Shay Shay appearance. Yeah. By the way, outstanding interview. I don't know if anybody has the time, but whatever you think of Trump, JD Vance actually smoked him. In terms of JD Vance is an amazing speaker.
He's a brilliant guy. He's a really brilliant guy.
I talked about this a little bit earlier. I think this is how going forward, whether you're running for dog catcher or wherever, this should be the norm, not, the newspaper wants you to answer our questionnaire. It's, hey, Bob, forcing every politician to sweat for 2 or 3 hours in an interview like this, I think does far more for the discourse and does far more for politics.
Just talk
than really anything.
Talk.
Yeah.
Not even interview, a conversation.
Why did you come? Yeah. What's your history? What's your background? What are your feelings on that? And it is, I think, super beneficial. And I do wish Kamala Harris actually did.
And that could be a positive development in politics.
Oh, I think it will be.
Yeah, because I'm saying it is likely to unfold that way when we consider how we view our politicians and the ease of creating new interviews and things of this nature, and the multiple outlets out there for politicians on social media and with independent creators and things of that nature, where it used to be everything was naturally very stodgy. If you look back at 20th century politics, right? So you had your big 3 networks, you had politicians were very, very suit and tie all the time. Everything was very, very formalized. And it's like, now we are going to talk to the potential president of the United States. It was a very big deal. Now everything is far more relaxed. It's far more laid back. There's a lot more disparagement and treating them like crap on a higher level by virtually everyone, and the discourse has become very volatile, obviously. But at the same time, there is much more opportunity to have actually a genuine conversation in ways you never would have seen with Reagan or even Clinton or anyone that was in the 70s and 60s and before that. That now they're much more humanized in ways that, for the most part, have been very negative. But this is a positive potential outcome with respect to, like, let's sit down and actually have a whole lengthy conversation about why it is that you changed your mind on this issue and really get to know them as people in ways that no presidential candidates have ever been explored before.
You know what, Joe, taking that a bit further, maybe it can tone down the deification as well. Like, this is a human being having a conversation, not a god, so to speak. Because there are people who I think elevate these candidates to be even higher of a status, but they are technically people who are being elected to do a particular job. They're not kings. It's not a coronation, unless, well, sort of is one case. But anyway, I think that getting to understand them as a person, and you may come to a conclusion why they've come up with some policy or what their background is that has led them into it. I mean, you may not even agree, but you can understand how they got there. Like Nate and I, how often do you and I argue, Nate?
All the time. Yeah, we do argue all the time. Yeah.
But a lot of it is your life experience and my life experience is so different. And then we talk about our life experiences, and then we usually walk away going, well, if I had those particular life experiences, and maybe my conclusion would be more similar to my counterpart.
Yeah. Like I always say, sometimes I kind of feel like the great thing about talking with Eric, to be honest with you, is because Eric gives you and Uncivil. I gotta put you both in, because you guys give me a perspective. Because growing up in a liberal New York and the left, like I grew up in the left of the left of the left, so sometimes I don't understand it from the other perspective. I'm thinking this perspective is the right perspective, and then you guys will say, and I'll say, you know what, that actually makes sense. And I think we kind of have some of that here because I watch the extreme left stuff and extreme right stuff, and everything that we're saying here about like the JD Vance interview and all that stuff, we're all like, yeah, this is great. That's the exact opposite of what they're saying. They're saying that the Joe Rogan interview was horrible. It was a puff piece. He just sat there for 3 hours and there was no policy discussed. It was just him. How great are you? And then when I mentioned to my liberal counterparts, well, he did ask Kamala to come, and they were saying that no, he would have challenged Kamala, and this. So I think at this point in time, we're in our silos, and literally we're headed to battle in a couple of days. So it's almost like when you're independent like myself, it's weird because just as passionate as the people here on this panel are for Trump, the next panel I go on with the left-wing people, they'll be just as passionate against him. And actually, it's funny, not for Kamala, but just against Trump.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean?
And I agree with the point you made earlier, that his presence motivates people to come out, and they try playing into that as hard as possible by threatening that he's going to destroy abortion. And
not as much now, though. Not as much.
It is not as much.
Lessened. The people have heard Nazi and fascist so many times that it's the boy who cried wolf, and no, it is toned down. A lot of people are just kind of like, oh yeah.
But on that point, can I talk about what happened recently at CNN with that conservative guy getting kicked off the air apparently forever?
I hope your beeper doesn't go off. He said
yeah, I was like, that was
joke is funny.
So it's like CNN's
first,
hand wringing about the whole thing is kind of irritating me because they say Nazi all the time, and he makes an offhanded joke in response to being called a Nazi. He makes an offhand joke, well, I hope your beeper doesn't cough, implying that he's part of Hezbollah. And apparently that is the offense beyond the pale. That is a bridge too far.
Yeah.
What the hell, man?
Baby.
He just got called a Nazi and he can't return in kind? What kind of BS is this?
Well, they made it as if he was wishing death on him when the joke was not, I wish death on you. The joke was, I think you're a terrorist.
Right, and it was also, I hope it doesn't go off.
So. Yeah, that's why the implication is you have a beeper because you're a terrorist, not that I wish death on you.
And the beeper wouldn't kill you; it would just blow off part of your body.
Right.
Anyway, but to obviously,
it takes balls.
And Ian is majorly MAGA, and
he's. We could talk about Pierre Paul.
We can, because I do want to know, Ian, how this election, because we're so centric about this is the most important election, or not. How is it affecting you in Canada? How is this being seen up there? Are you guys just laughing at us, or are you concerned one way or another? How do you feel?
I mean, there was just an article about Trump made some offhand comment about like we need to go take Canada's water, and and there's all sorts of people just losing their mind about that, and I'm like, great, buy a gun then, like. Okay, you're telling me you're worried that Trump's going to come up here? Like, get a gun, because what else do you want to do about it? But I mean, it's going to affect the next Canadian election is basically going to be Justin Trudeau trying to pretend that he's running against Trump. And that's sort of been the going strategy. Yeah.
Isn't he on his way out? Isn't he kind of on his way out? I thought
he's trying his best not to, but his party's trying to force him out. But they actually eliminated any provision to allow them to remove their leader unless they lose an election. So that's going to be a whole thing. But they're going to be trying to say that the opposition is Trump, and it's going to be Trump. So it is going to affect things here, and we'll just have to see. But I mean, I think that this government has run its course. I think that they deserve to not only lose, but lose in a sufficiently humiliating way that they have to reassess their thinking. And there is the possibility of that. If the polls get much worse for the Liberal Party, they may be basically thrown out into the wilderness. So
what about Jagmeet Singh? Didn't he have something going with Trudeau to work the two parties together to hold his power?
So he has officially abandoned that, but he's also not willing to push for a confidence vote to take down the government because we don't have like a fixed term. There's a period where the election has to happen, but the government can fall before that if they lose a confidence vote. But he's not willing to do that. Trudeau has really managed to play him into a corner because he doesn't want an election because then the Conservatives win and he considers that a total loss, especially because everything that they gained by working with Trudeau, they're going to lose if the Conservatives get a majority, which they're currently set to. But Trudeau is incredibly unpopular, and right now he's in a position of having to stand up and support and publicly keep Trudeau in power, especially because now the Bloc Québécois has said we want an election. So he's the only thing keeping Trudeau in power. So it's becoming very difficult for him when he says, "Oh, I'm not like Trudeau. I'm opposed to Trudeau and his this, but I also absolutely support him up there." And the other problem he's got is that he's got to be in power for a certain amount of time in order to get a pension. And that happens in February. And
okay. So come March, he may just say, "Okay, bye-bye."
Well, the thing is if he's got a brain cell in his head and if he cares about his party, what he does is he pushes for the election before that so he can defray that criticism. The problem is he's not looking like he's going to win his own seat. So if he does that, then he's out and he probably doesn't get his pension, which over his lifetime would be worth more than $500,000. But if he waits until he gets his pension and then, pulls that trigger, then that's going to be nonstop election fodder. Is just going to be, hey, you are, you did this just for your pension. You are a self-centered whatever. So
He likes watches, from what I understand.
Yeah, he sort of boasts about being the man of the people, but he likes Rolexes. He really likes his sort of luxury goods, which makes the sort of champagne socialist label super easy to tag him with. He's honestly a millstone around the NDP's neck at this point, and it'll be good when they bounce him. The NDP right now, typically the NDP does best when the Liberal Party here fails. And so the NDP should be just doing amazingly. The problem is that he's let himself get outplayed so badly. They really need to replace him with somebody who's sort of more like the working class as opposed to the angry student class, because that's really his sort of base is the the very left online sort of students as opposed to union workers and so forth. So
Pierre comes across to me, from what I've seen of him, as almost like a JD Vance. I'm not going to say like a Trump, but kind of like a JD Vance. He seems to be very sharp and speaks very well. Is that a bad interpretation, or how is he taken in Canada?
He speaks well, although he gets criticized because he also does he's fairly good at playing like attack dog. And so a lot of the time he gets criticized, like when there's a reporter who tries to ambush him with some BS, and he'll just be like, "No, I'm not playing this game." So he gets criticized for that because he's just sort of unwilling to play the games there. But the media here has been the recipient of a law that basically tries to shake down Google and Facebook in favor of paying news media. And so what that means is that there's a lot of favor that Trudeau has shown from the established news media because he's literally paying them out, and Poilievre is likely to eliminate that. So, so there's a bit of interesting wrinkles there. It's becoming. So they want to paint him, in certain ways, but I think it's going to be difficult. And I think Poilievre is going to be really interesting to watch in debates. I don't normally do political commentary, but it might be I might be tempted to like cover the Canadian debates when that happens. We don't know when that is, but
How are the
it'll be-
people reacting to him? Is he popular or is he hated?
he's unpopular, but he's up against a guy whose popularity ratings are slightly above like whatever you might find floating in a gas station.
They hate him less than Trudeau.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
That's good.
Oh, that's like here.
Yeah.
That's
That's why-
pretty much it.
That's why.
Yeah.
That's why and who Runkle really supports Maxime Bernier and the People's Party of Canada.
Honestly, I think Bernier is he is an asset for the Liberal Party. I don't mean in the sense of like an actual controlled asset. I just mean that his existence is
He's
good
a
for the Liberal
distraction.
Party because he splits the vote, and really, I think Bernier's in it for Bernier, and that's about it. But he was a candidate to try to be the Conservative nominee. And when he didn't get it, he got super hurt feelings and started his own party.
Mhm.
And but the thing is with the way vote splitting works, his existence makes it more likely that the Liberal Party wins.
But could the reverse happen, that Bernier would get together with Pellier? Well, I can't say his name. The same way that Jug Meat got with Trudeau.
The thing is he's not going to
win.
win a single seat. He's not. But what it can happen is because we go by ridings. So what you can end up with is like,
Which is like a county, right? Here.
Yeah. So we
It's
can
like a
end up
district.
with something where it's like 49% for, or 48% for Poilievre, 50 or just 49.5 for Trudeau and 1.5% for Bernier, which means Trudeau wins. Even, and he gets that entire seat. So even though Bernier won't take a single seat, there is the possibility that he will throw some of those seats to the Liberal Party. And by doing so, he just provides a benefit to the Liberal Party. Now, so objectively, his existence makes things worse. So it's like, I kind of wish he'd just kind of go away and
take a break this round.
Well, take a break and just keep taking a break. Like just,
all right.
So that's kind of my thoughts on that one. Because I really think we need to not only get rid of Trudeau, but get rid of Trudeau in a way that the Liberal Party has to sit down, and there's a lot of like corruption and cronyism within the Liberal Party, and they need to like realize that they have to purge that, or else, but that's not how they roll. So we're just stuck with it.
All right. Well, we're running into our time here, so I usually close up and try to find out what everybody has going on. And starting with Kurt, what do you have coming up?
Yeah, so we're going to be covering some interesting stories coming up on the channel. We recently did one on Garth Brooks and Sarah Boone. We did a story. We're going to be posting one soon about the McFlurry. They got a copyright exemption from the Copyright Office so that the people can now repair the machines. So that's exciting. More McFlurries in our future. The machines can now be repaired by third parties. So you may be able to get your milkshake after all. Very exciting. And also just trying to follow up on what's going on in the news. And I'll probably try to keep up with some of this New York sub story because that sounds interesting. And maybe I'll go visit Joe and we can go to the trial together because it'd be a good bro time.
That'd be awesome. When you mentioned that, by the way, I just picture like someone pounding and saying, "Hello, McFlurry. Anyone home? Hello."
Yeah. So yes, the Copyright Office has come to the rescue. So that's what we're covering, and we'll go from there. So that's all.
Back to the Future reference. I like it.
Nate, what do you have going on?
Just gonna go recap of the Young Thug issue because I think nobody's done like a breakdown of the charges or anything. So I think that's a place where I can sit a video in for that. I also have this cop who pistol whipped a jaywalker. And come to find out, pistol whipping isn't one of the things that cops are supposed or trained to do. They're trained to arrest, but they're not trained to pistol whip. So the
which is a
cop
shortcoming.
charged.
Are you going to tell me that? Hold on, Nate. Are you going to tell me that rubber hoses are out too?
You ever hold it up too? Yeah. So
Wow.
the cop is charged, and he's shocked that he's charged. Like, why are they charging me for pistol whipping a jaywalker? They're like, yeah, nobody trains you to pistol whip jaywalkers. So and there's there's a lot of interesting cases because obviously I think most people saw the fentanyl case with the cop or the NYPD cop. But another case that I'm also doing is there was a OnlyFans model, two OnlyFans models. One, her child was found in a U-Haul truck and unfortunately passed away. They thought it was because of heat. Toxicology report came back. It was the 1-month-old baby overdosed on cocaine. So they're charging a mom with first-degree murder because they're like, how the hell did the baby get cocaine in the system? And then also,
those tests aren't reliable, man. I'm just saying that doesn't make any sense.
And then the second is that so then another OnlyFans model, she left 4 of her kids at home, I think ages like 7 and under, while she went on vacation for 4 days, came back, and the cops arrested her for multiple charges. So we get to see how OnlyFans models are living their lives when they have children. So that's what I'm going to be taking up.
Sean, who's Pisco Liddy? Before you tell us what's happening,
he is a attorney. He does mainly on Twitch, but he also does YouTube stuff.
He's a
he doesn't seem to be happy with you right now.
Yeah, well, I mean,
is he in the chat here? Is he in the chat here?
No, I just was looking at X for
Trump.
a second.
Well, Trump kind of broke his brain lately. I mean, like he's made other arguments for that, and Joe's had him on before.
I've debated
there are times he's made very,
before.
He's a very left-leaning person.
I debated him on the 14th Amendment. I debated him on the 14th Amendment invalidating Trump. And I told him before the decision came out that I expected it to be at least 7-2, 8, and possibly 8-1, and I wouldn't be shocked if I saw 9-0, and it was 9-0. And he thought I was crazy. He thought I was crazy for saying that, and I was.
So what I will say is, generally, he makes pretty. I may disagree with a lot of his arguments, but they're generally well reasoned and rational. But he's lost his mind about the whole Trump. When Trump says, Liz Cheney, like we give her a rifle and then she can go stare down all the people shooting at her because, like Liz Cheney is a war hawk and she is part of the reason why the Iraq war lie kind of all happened and it's her fault too. And, everybody's running around saying, oh, Trump, what's your firing squad?
In fairness, I think it was more her dad's fault than hers.
She was an
I'm sure she agreed with it, but her dad, I'm going to elevate him as a higher.
She was a deputy assistant secretary of state. She had her hands in it. Okay. She helped steer government policy. But yeah, that, and he's like, Trump wants to kill her, and I'm like, I thought it's a funny joke. It's the least we could do for the Iraq war, and now it's just the Trump has broke the man's brain. Hopefully, when the election's over, he comes back to rationality. But in the meantime, it's just
well,
it's
Trump
what
wins. I don't know how much it's going to help.
Well, okay, or Kamala wins. I don't know either way. But the guy, I may disagree with his arguments, but I can at least sit there and say, wow, that's rational, well-reasoned, and intellectually based. But now he's, completely...
He's lost that.
His cheese slid off the cracker in the past couple of weeks.
All right.
So,
and what do you have coming up? Sorry.
Got a couple things coming up. I've been looking at... People have been sending this to me. The amount of money in college football is driving the ACC as it's slowly starting to disintegrate. There are lawsuits between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West Conference. Now they're going to start suing each other because they're poaching teams. And it's very interesting, like the amount of money that these guys are fighting over now, which it's really funny. They're like, oh, these student athletes. It's all about the athletes. And we find out it's about, now they're squabbling over hundreds of millions of dollars. That's one of the things we're looking at. Also, we might be doing a little more looking into and Runkle, I know you know about this, but there is a guy here on there's been a copyright lawsuit over 3D printed gun plans that were being distributed. And it's turned into, there's now a copyright lawsuit going on over that. And it's actually a pretty interesting topic. I might be going into that a little bit more coming up because one of my videos got struck by the defendant in the copyright lawsuit. So
really?
Yes, because apparently fun. I was cyberbullying.
Huh. All right. You're a pretty wicked dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. Everything got twisted out of order. So, Joe, what do you have coming up?
On Tuesday, I'm covering a story about a former president pistol whipping a former district attorney, and yeah,
You said former president.
A former president pistol whipping a former district attorney. Yeah, it was
This
a
is
big
clickbait in action here.
Was this before the invention of the telegraph?
No, I meant through an election. I meant through an election. In my country on Tuesday, we're having an election, which is kind of a big deal. I'm expecting a former president to pistol whip a former district attorney.
Okay.
It was a very vague reference, which apparently was too vague. It was too vague.
Oh, I think you told me something Andrew Jackson did.
that would be
would be
based.
There was a South Carolina senator who used a cane and
Sumner.
Yeah.
Sumner, yeah. Sorry.
All right,
severely beaten.
All right. Well, anyway, yeah, no, I'm all about the election. I do plan on trying to hook up with everyone there, but I expect to have a lengthy show on Tuesday night where I plan on starting very early and running very late, and hopefully I'll be able to coordinate with some of y'all as well as others as we watch.
I'd like to co-stream that with you, Joe. I'm in for a co-stream if you like a guest. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that'd be cool. For sure. I know Ron Coleman's supposed to be coming in, and awesome. I'm still taking some reservations, but yeah, sure, that'd be great. We'll talk after the show. So,
all right, Ian, I know that you're planning on obviously streaming the election. It's a top of your concerns. What else do you have going on?
I'm going to take election day off just because I'm not competing with that. But what is it? I am going to be.
Nick, what's up,
really? Man? Oh, hey. I'm going to be covering the whole Cody Wilson thing. He's the guy that Sean was mentioning. The guy who is. He's basically been accused of stealing in the most hilariously dumb way copyrighted firearm designs. And when I say in the most hilariously dumb way, essentially Fudbusters put out like a giant cartoon X with an anvil over it and like set the 3D printed plans under it. And Cody Wilson walks up and is like, giant anvil. I'm going to stand on this. And yeah, it's not working out well for Cody Wilson, who is unsympathetic because he's also a child sex offender. So yeah, that is it's really easy to dunk on the guy, and he's also going on a complete rage fest across the internet. So we're gonna keep dunking on that guy until it stops being funny, which will probably be like
never
2072.
Yeah.
So there's that. I want to cover a famous Canadian case. I sort of mentioned it earlier. I'm trying to figure out how to run the transcript through AI so that I can actually have like audio to cover. And also on Saturday, so the 2nd, I'm doing a 24-hour live stream for Extra Life for charity. So I'm going to be trying to raise money for kids. I'm going to be just hanging out for 24 hours, basically going, here's a donation link, please hit that. And last year we raised over 100,000 for the Stollery Children's Hospital, so we'll see how we can do.
That's awesome.
I think it's going to be a little harder this year because nobody has any money anymore. So but that's sort of the immediate plans.
Awesome. All right. Coming up, we've got Freeform Friday for America's Untold Stories tonight. Those of you who aren't subscribed here, it'd be really cool if you like this kind of show that you consider subscribing before. And lately, I've been pimping out my new channel, Proven Conspiracies. It's been doing pretty well. It's new. It's got just over 10,000 subscribers. Just dropped a video yesterday, a Halloween video, which, of course, got demonetized from YouTube because it's YouTube. I don't know. I got it on review, but consider checking it out. I think it's kind of cool. We go into it. I know I had an exchange with Ian about that. Some of these cases with the poisoning of the candy and the razor blades are true, but not in the way you think. It's not usually a rando. Very specifically, there was a boy, sadly, who was poisoned by cyanide in his pixie sticks. His father actually did it. His father poisoned his kids. The boy died.
Oh, okay.
For the purposes of an insurance policy.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, it's just scum of the earth. And I don't shed many tears. He was executed in the 80s for his crime.
By
He
pixie
was
sticks or
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
You're like,
actually,
I remember
pulled these out of evidence.
I remember the Tylenol scare in the 80s where
we covered that. I covered that too on this episode. Yep, absolutely. And sadly, by the way, the only real suspect they had who has never been charged died last year for the Tylenol case as well.
Oh, I thought they arrested somebody for that.
I don't know if they ever arrested, but it is considered unsolved. And the main suspect did die last year. So anyway, if you guys want to check it out, it's called Proven Conspiracies. I mean, it goes into MK Ultra, Operation Gladio, on and on and on. A lot of different stuff, but I also like to cover things like, what you're eating. I'll be covering Chernobyl coming out. A lot of people got a lot of things wrong about Chernobyl, and I think it'll really, really, really surprise you. I also interviewed on my channel Philip Grossman, who has been to Chernobyl, I think 14 times now. Inside of it, he's a videographer. He's been all throughout the facility, and some of the things he's stated are just amazing. So anyway, I appreciate that. And once again, if you like this show where we argue about or talk about cases, I make dumb comments and get corrected. Sometimes we talk about politics. Sometimes Joe has a rant. Sometimes cool people like Ian shows up. Please consider subscribing below.
Wait, if I'm your metric for cool, this is really that's
yeah, no, you're better off being a nerd than cool.
All right,
well, cool to be a nerd.
Definitely a nerd.
Okay, nerds, cool. I think there's an inside joke in there somewhere. On that note, everybody, thank you so much.
Trump 2024.
That's right.